Israel, the promised land, the land of the Bible, the land where some of the most important events of history have taken place. Amongst its ruins, this land has come to life again. From the dunes in the desert, towns and villages are sprouting up. Modern resettlement began already back in 1878, when there were only 24,000 Jews living in the country. Since the State of Israel was proclaimed on May the 14th, 1948, immigration has become its lifeblood, and people have gathered from every corner of the earth. But above the tumult of rebuilding, you cannot help but hear the echoes of the past. Abraham's Beersheba still lies at the edge of the desert, even though it has become a busy city. Jerusalem, her name means peace, yet wars have raged about her in centuries past. But through it all, she has retained an ancient aura of sanctity. Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus and King David. In the hills and along the shores of the Sea of Galilee, you can follow the footsteps of Jesus. Israel, where the old and the new live side by side, the promised land. Jerusalem, the city of David, 3,000 years old. Prophets, conquerors, kings, Jews, Christians and Muslims have stamped their words and deeds in her memory. Men have loved her, yet hated one another within her walls. Today, Jerusalem is unified. You picture David, the rugged hero and king of Israel, composing his psalms in the morning air as he looks down on the city. Her stones have been used again and again. Each one of Jerusalem's builders used the old and then added their own ideas. The Jews, who mourned her desolation more deeply than any other people, have returned to her with reverent devotion and love. Archaeological digs are now conducted under the supervision of international renowned archaeologists, university professors, and museum experts. Many students are enrolled in the institutes of archaeology in both Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. spoke to an expert on Israel and its people, Rabbi Shmuel Natan. Rabbi Natan, what does Israel and also Jerusalem mean to the Jews here and around the world?
Well, as you might know, the city of Jerusalem is already mentioned in the book of Genesis in chapter 14 and became famous as a city of hospitality. The first one who visited here was our patriarch Abraham, who later, as you know, was given the divine promise that this is going to be the promised land. The national, historical, as well as the religious importance was, of course, underlined through the establishment of the temple by Solomon. This temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586. The temple was rebuilt and again destroyed by the Romans in the year of 70. Ever since this destruction, the Jews wanted to come back to the central place of their worship, namely the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. The temple was not rebuilt and is not going to be rebuilt, but by the Messiah himself. This is our hope and this is our prayer that we shall be privileged to see it in our times.
Rabbi Natan, what meaning does the Golden Gate have to your people?
The Golden Gate is expected to be the entry of the Messiah. We still, as you know, we expect the coming of the Messiah, and the Golden Gate today, therefore, is barred, not by us, but by people who don't want us to have the Messiah. The idea for closing the gate was in order to prevent the Messiah to enter the city. A number of measures were taken to prevent his entry. One was to put a cemetery in front. Secondly, not to open the gate as such. Thirdly, on the other side, put even modern barbed wire. But I can assure you and others that the Messiah will come when he likes to come. Whether any of those preventive measures have been applied, have not been applied.
It was in the middle of the 16th century that Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, who ruled the Middle East at that time, had a very, very bad dream. In his dream, he saw two pairs of lions coming up to his bed to devour him. He asked his advisors what this dream might mean. And the explanation given to him was that Jerusalem, the holy city, lies open, its walls crumbled, its gates destroyed. Build a wall around the city, protect it, and Allah will spare your life. There are tombs, most ancient tombs. There's the tomb of Zechariah the prophet. There's a tomb of Absalom, son of David. This might well have been the very beginning of the most ancient cemetery the Jewish people know, the cemetery on Mount of Olives. We Jewish people expect Prophet Elijah to reappear, introducing the Messiah. Now, our tradition has it that with the arrival of the Messiah, there will be a general resurrection of the dead. And therefore have many, many very pious Jewish people seeing it as their ultimate goal in life to spend the last years of their lives in Jerusalem, to pass away there when the time comes, and to be buried on the Holy Mount of Olives in this ancient Jewish cemetery, to be right on the spot, right on time, for the arrival of the Messiah and their resurrection. The Western Wall, as we see it today, is actually a restoration made by King Herod of one of the four retaining walls around the temple area. The second temple that originally was rebuilt under Ezra and Nehemiah approximately 2,500 years ago. But as this is the only wall that remains standing from all the temple area, it became most sacred to the Jewish people.
Within these walls on Mount Moriah, the patriarch Abraham was ready to offer his only son. God tested Abraham and said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah." On this very same Mount Moriah stood the temple built by King Solomon. Today, there stands the Mosque of Omar. Muslim tradition claims that Muhammad ascended into heaven from here. Mustafa, what does it really take to be a good Muslim?
To be a good Muslim is to believe of the 5 pillars of Islam. They are, the first is to believe that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad his prophet. Second is to pray 5 times a day. Third is to give 2.5% of your income to the poor. 4 is to fast the month of Ramadan. The 5th is to pay a pilgrimage to Mecca, which is once in your life. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
One are the 7 gates leading into the old city, and maybe one of the most beautiful of the gates is Jaffa Gate. It is named Jaffa Gate because it was to it that the caravan trail leading up from the ancient port city of Jaffa used to lead. In the old city of Jerusalem, there is a Muslim quarter, an Armenian quarter, a Jewish quarter, and a Christian quarter. David Street and the adjoining streets, most colorful and most beautiful bazaar streets and very exotic shops, very appealing, especially to the visitor. And yet, part of the fun of shopping there is bargaining. You don't give the merchant the price he asks for. You would spoil his day if you did. He gives you his price, you give him your price, he lets you walk out, he calls you back again, he gives you another price, you give him another price, he lets you walk out again. By the time he lets you walk away, that is the price you really pay. Via Dolorosa, the way of the suffering, the way of the cross taken by Jesus from the judgment hall of Pontius Pilatus to Mount Calvary. Along the Via Dolorosa, we know today 14 stations, 14 happenings. First station was where he was given the cross. Where Jesus collapsed under the weight of the cross. When Jesus met his mother. Where Simon of Cyrene relieved Jesus of the weight of the cross, carried the cross for him a little while. In spite of all the hardships, in spite of all the troubles, development and progress goes on. The stone we see today in Jerusalem's modern buildings even comes from the stone quarries in the mountains of Judea. It is a very famous Jerusalem limestone in its natural shades and colors, from white to yellow to pink. This is done following a municipal bylaw, a law that demands of all builders to use this Jerusalem limestone in the buildings today in order to protect and retain the character of the city of Jerusalem. Unatati lahem beveti ubechomotai yad vashem. I gave them within my house and within my walls a memorial and a name, a memorial to the 6 million of our people, for those who fought in the underground, for those who rebuilt in the camps, for those who revolted in the ghettos, for those who joined the partisans, for those who saved lives, to all of them, to eternity. And in this hall of remembrance are graves of ashes we've brought from the terrible years and the terrible camps, and an eternal flame on them forever. The Knesset building is the home of our parliament, the Parliament of the State of Israel, which consists of 120 representatives of the people, headed by a cabinet of 20 members, which again is headed by the Prime Minister, the government of the new State of Israel.
Gethsemane. Some olive trees are more than 2,000 years old. Jesus fell on his face and prayed, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt." Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners.
Father Kidd, what actually brought you to Israel?
Well, my love for the Holy Land. In my order, we have an old tradition, 700 years old, of serving in the land where Christ lived. Our founder came here in the early Middle Ages, and, well, we've been here ever since.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the area where we are at the moment?
Yes, this is called the Shrine of the Visitation at Ein Karem. And some people asks why we'd say visitation and not visit. It's simply that in the coming of Mary here to see her cousin Elizabeth, a lot more than a visit occurred. She had been given a sign that she would find her cousin Elizabeth, who was advanced in age, pregnant with child, as a sign of the wonder that was coming to her. And in addition to that, in addition to the sign, she discovered that Elizabeth knew the secret which she had been unable to tell to anyone else. And so it was here that Mary broke out in that great song of joy, magnifying the wonder and the power and the love of God.
What does the mosaic on the wall actually depict then, Father?
Yeah, it depicts Mary journeying from Nazareth to Ein Karem, but in a symbolic way. It's not a realistic picture, of course. Especially, we know the real Mary was not accompanied by a platoon of angels. The angels symbolize the divine action, the divine assistance that surrounded Mary in this moment. And she, of course, as we firmly believe, was already bearing the Son of God. And so the angels are shown escorting her, honoring her in this wonderful journey where she will burst out in joyful thanksgiving for this wonder.
Father Kidd, after having lived in the Holy Land for 4 years, how do you feel about it today? What I'm actually trying to ask you, what has it done for you personally?
Well, I'm just delighted to have lived here in the land where Christ lived. And I've been delighted in many ways to understand much more of the references of the New Testament text, but above all, spiritually, to appreciate more the concrete, real dimensions of the Incarnation. Too many people today are pulling apart ideas, making religion a matter of intellectual semantics, instead of realizing the concrete gift of God to man.
Bethlehem, the house of bread. In this region were shepherds keeping watch over their flock. An angel appeared to them and said, "I bring you good news of great joy, which will come to all people. For to you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord." Suddenly, there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God